Hello, and welcome back to Storytime with Eric Zimmer. Where we last left off in Charlie in the Great Glass Elevator, we came across some strange-looking creatures inside Space Hotel USA that spelled out the word scram. And everybody rushed back to the Great Glass Elevator so suddenly and so frantically, they're now back out in orbit again, I'm assuming. Let's find out. You ready? Alright. Let's begin. Chapter 8. The Vermicious Canids. "Oh my goodness me," gasped Mr. Wonka. "Oh my sainted pants. Oh my painted ants. Oh my crawling cats. I hope never to see anything like that again." He floated over to the white button and pressed it. The booster rockets fired. The elevator shot forward at such a speed that soon the space hotel was out of sight far behind. "But who were those awful creatures?" Charlie asked. "You mean you didn't know?" cried Mr. Wonka. "Well, it's a good thing you didn't. If you had even the faintest idea of what horrors you were up against, the marrow would have run out of your bones. You'd have been fossilized with fear and glued to the ground. Aloud. Then they'd gotten you. You'd have been a cooked cucumber. You'd have been rasped into 1,000 tiny bits, grated like cheese, and flocculated alive. They'd have made necklaces from your knuckle bones and bracelets from your teeth. Because those creatures, my dear ignorant boy, are the most brutal, vindictive, venomous, murderous beasts in the entire universe." Here Mr. Wonka paused and ran the tip of a pink tongue all the way around his lips. "Vermicious canids," he cried. "That's what they are." He sounded the K. Canids. Like that. "I thought they were grobes," Charlie said. "Those oozy-woozy grobes you were telling the president about." "Oh no, I just made those up to scare the White House," Mr. Wonka answered. "Well, there's nothing made up about Vermicious canids, believe you me. They live, as everybody knows, on the planet Vermes, which is 18,427 million miles away. Or, to make it easier, 18.427 billion. Oh, whatever. And they are very, very clever brutes indeed. The Vermicious canid can turn itself into any shape it wants. It has no bones. Its body is really one huge muscle, enormously strong, but very stretchy and squishy, like a mixture of rubber and putty, with steel wires inside. Normally it is egg-shaped, but it can just as easily give itself 2 legs like a human, or 4 legs like a horse. It can become as round as a ball, or as long as a kite string. From 50 yards away, a fully grown Vermicious canid could stretch out its neck and bite your head off without even getting up." "Bite your head off with what?" said Grandma Georgina. "I didn't see any mouth." "They have other things to bite with," said Mr. Wonka darkly. "Such as what?" said Grandma Georgina. "Ring off," said Mr. Wonka. "Your time's up. But listen, everybody. I just had a funny thought. There I was kidding around with the president, pretending we were creatures from some other planet, and by golly, there actually were creatures from some other planet on board." "Do you think there were many?" Charlie asked. "More than the 5 we saw?" "Thousands," said Mr. Wonka. "There are 500 rooms in the space hotel, and there's probably a family of them in every room." "Somebody's going to get a nasty shock when they go on board," said Grandpa Joe. "They'll be eaten like peanuts," said Mr. Wonka, "every one of them." "You don't really mean that, do you, Mr. Wonka?" Charlie said. "Of course I mean it," said Mr. Wonka. "These Vermicious canids are the terror of the universe. They travel through space in great swarms, landing in other stars and planets and destroying everything they find. There used to be some rather nice creatures living on the moon a long time ago. They were called Poozas, but the Vermicious canids ate the lot. They did the same on Venus and Mars and many other planets. Why haven't they come down on Earth and eaten us? Charlie asked. They've tried to, Charlie, many times, but they've never made it. Thank God for that. You see, all around our Earth there is a vast envelope of air and gas, and anything hitting that at high speed gets red hot. Space capsules are made of special heat-proof metal, and when they make a re-entry, their speeds are reduced right down to about 2,000 miles an hour. First by retro rockets and then by something called friction. But even so, they get badly scorched. Vermicious canids, which are not heat-proof at all, and don't have any retro rockets, get sizzled up completely before they're halfway through. Have you ever seen a shooting star? Lots of them, Charlie said. Actually, they're not shooting stars at all, said Mr. Wonka. They're shooting vermicious canids. They're vermicious canids trying to enter the Earth's atmosphere at high speed and going up in flames. What rubbish, said Grandma Georgina. You wait, said Mr. Wonka. You may see it happening before the day is done. But if they're so fierce and dangerous, Charlie said, why didn't they eat us up right away in the space hotel? Why did they waste time twisting their bodies into letters and writing scram? Because they're show-offs, Mr. Wonka replied. They're tremendously proud of being able to write like that. But why scram when they wanted to catch us and eat us? It's the only word they know, Mr. Wonka said. Look, screamed Grandma Josephine, pointing through the glass. Over there! Before he even looked, Charlie knew exactly what he was going to see. So did the others. They could tell by the high hysterical note in the old lady's voice. And there it was, cruising effortlessly alongside them, a simply colossal vermicious canid, as thick as a whale, as long as a truck, with the most brutal vermicious look in its eye. It was no more than a dozen yards away, egg-shaped, slimy greenish-brown, with one malevolent red eye, the only one visible, fixed intently upon the people floating inside the great glass elevator. The end has come, screamed Grandma Georgina. He'll eat us all, cried Mrs. Bucket. In one gulp, said Mr. Bucket. We're done for, Charlie, said Grandpa Joe. Charlie nodded. He couldn't speak or make a sound. His throat was seized up with fright. But this time Mr. Wonka didn't panic. He remained perfectly calm. We'll soon get rid of that, he said, and he pressed 6 buttons all at once, and 6 booster rockets went off simultaneously under the elevator. The elevator leaped forward like a stung horse, faster and faster, but the great green greasy canid kept pace alongside it with no trouble at all. Make it go away, yelled Grandma Georgina. I can't stand it looking at me. Dear lady, said Mr. Wonka, I can't possibly get in here. I don't mind admitting I was a trifle alarmed back there in the space hotel, and with good reason. But here we have nothing to fear. The great glass elevator is shockproof, waterproof, bomb-proof, bulletproof, and canid-proof. So just relax and enjoy it. Oh, you canid, you are vile and vermicious, cried Mr. Wonka. You are slimy and soggy and squishious. But what do we care, 'cause you can't get in here, so hop it and don't get ambitious. What a witty limerick. At this point, the massive vermicious canid outside turned and started cruising away from the elevator. There you are, cried Mr. Wonka, triumphant. It heard me. It's going home. But Mr. Wonka was wrong. Oh God. When the creature was about 100 yards away, it stopped, hovered for a moment, then went smoothly in reverse, coming back towards the elevator with its rear end, which was the pointed end of the egg, now in front. Even going backwards, its acceleration was unbelievable. It was like some monstrous bullet coming at them, and it came so fast nobody had time to cry out. This is not good. Definitely not good at all. And that's what Richard Tyler said in The Page Master. Crash! It struck the glass elevator with the great glass elevator with the most enormous bang, and the whole thing shivered and shook. But the glass held, and the canid bounced off like a rubber ball. What did I tell you? Shouted Mr. Wonka, triumphant. We're safe as sausages in here. You'll have a nasty headache. You'll have a nasty headache after that, said Grandpa Joe. It's not his head, it's his bottom, said Charlie. Look, Grandpa, there's a big bump coming up on the pointed end where it hit. It's turning black and blue. And so it was. A purple, bruisy bump the size of a small automobile was appearing on the pointed rear end of the giant canid. Hello, you dirty great beast, cried Mr. Wonka. Hello, you great canid. Tell us, how do you do? You're a rather strange color today. Your bottom is purple and lavender blue. Should it really be looking that way? Are you not feeling well? Are you going to faint? Is it something we cannot discuss? It must be a very unpleasant complaint for your family as big as a bus. Let me get you a doctor. I know just the man for a canid with a nasty disease. He's a butcher by trade, which is not a bad plan, and he charges quite reasonable fees. Ah, here he is now. Doc, you really are kind to travel so far into space. There's your patient, the canid with the purple behind. Do you think it's a desperate case? Great heavens above, it's no wonder he's pale, said the doc with a horrible grin. There's a sort of balloon on the end of his tail. I must prick it at once with a pin. So he got out a thing like an Indian spear with feathers all over the top. And he lunged and he caught the canid smack in the rear, but alas, the balloon didn't pop. Cried the canid, what on earth am I going to do with this painful, preposterous lump? I can't remain standing the whole summer through, and I cannot sit down on my rump. It's a bad case of rear-ache, the medico said, and it's something I cannot repair. If you want to sit down, you must sit on your head, with your bottom high up in the air. Chapter 9. Gobbled Up. On the day when all this was happening, no factories were open in the world. All offices and schools were closed. Nobody moved away from the television screens, not even for a couple of minutes to get a Coke or feed the baby. The tension was unbearable. Everybody heard the American president's invitation to the men from Mars to visit them in the White House. And they heard the weird rhyming reply, which sounded rather threatening. They also heard a piercing scream, Grandma Josephine, and a little later on they heard someone shouting, Scram, 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 Mr. Wonka. Nobody could make head or tail of the shouting. They took it to be some kind of Martian language, but when the 8 mysterious astronauts suddenly rushed back into their glass capsule and broke away from the space hotel, you could almost hear the great sigh of relief that rose up from the peoples of the Earth. Telegrams and messages poured into the White House congratulating the president upon his brilliant handling of a frightening situation. The president himself remained calm and thoughtful. He sat at his desk, rolling a small piece of wet chewing gum beneath his finger and between his finger and thumb. He was waiting for the moment when he could flick it at Miss Tibbs without her seeing him. He flicked it and missed Miss Tibbs, but hit the Secretary of the Interior on the tip of his nose. Do you think the men from Mars have accepted my invitation to the White House? The president asked. Of course they have, said the Foreign Secretary. It was a brilliant speech, sir. They're probably on their way down here right now, said Miss Tibbs. Go and wash that nasty, sticky chewing gum off your fingers immediately. They could be here any minute. Let's have a song first, said the president. Please sing another one about me, Nanny. The nurse's song. The might... I need... The mighty man of whom I sing, the greatest of them all, was once a teeny little thing, just 18 inches tall. I knew him as a tiny tot. I nursed him on my knee. I used to sit him on the pot and wait for him to wee. That happens to be another word for pee, apparently. Ahem. I always washed between his toes and cut his little nails. I brushed his hair and wiped his nose and weighed him on the scales. Though through happy childhood days he strayed, as all nice children should, I smacked him when he disobeyed, and stopped when he was good. It soon began to dawn on me he wasn't very bright, because when he was 23 he couldn't read or write. What shall we do? His parents sobbed. The boy has got the vapors. He couldn't even get a job delivering the papers. Aha, I said, this little clot could be a politician. Nanny, he cried, oh Nanny, what a super proposition. Okay, I said, let's learn and note the art of politics. Let's teach you how to miss the boat, and how to drop some bricks, and how to win the people's vote, and lots of other tricks. Let's learn to make a speech a day upon the TV screen in which you never say exactly what you mean. And most important, by the way, is not to let your teeth decay and keep your fingers clean. And now that I am 89, it's too late to repent. The fault was mine. The little swine became the president. Bravo, Nanny! Cried the president, clapping his hands. Hooray! Shouted the others. Well done, Miss Vice President, ma'am. Brilliant. Tremendous. My goodness, said the president. Those men from Mars will be here any moment. What on earth are we going to give them for lunch? Where's my chief cook? The chief cook was a Frenchman. He was also a French spy, and at this moment he was listening at the keyhole of the president's study. Monsieur le Président, he said, bursting in. Chief cook, said the president. What do men from Mars eat for lunch? Mars bars, said the chief cook. Baked or boiled? Asked the president. Oh, baked, of course, Monsieur le Président. You will ruin the Mars bar by boiling. The voice of astronaut Shuckworth cut in over the loudspeaker in the president's study. Request permission to link up and go aboard Space Hotel, he said. Permission granted, said the president. Go right ahead, Shuckworth. It's all clear now, thanks to me. And so the large commuter capsule, piloted by Shuckworth, Shanks, and Showler, with all the hotel managers and assistant managers, and hall porters and pastry chefs and bellhops and waitresses and chambermaids on board. He switched them around a little this time, moved in smoothly, and linked up with the giant space hotel. Hey there, we've lost our television picture, called the president. I'm afraid the camera got smashed against the side of the space hotel, Mr. President, Shuckworth replied. The president said a very rude word into the microphone, and 10 million children across the nation began repeating it gleefully and got smacked by their parents. I guess censorship wasn't around at the time. But smacking? No. That's not how you do it. All astronauts and 150 hotel staff safely aboard Space Hotel, Shuckworth reported over the radio. We are now standing in the lobby. What do you think of it all? Asked the president. He knew the whole world was listening in, and he wanted Shuckworth to say how wonderful it was. Shuckworth didn't let him down. Gee, Mr. President, it's just great, he said. It's unbelievable. It's so enormous. And so, it's kind of hard to find words to describe it. It's so truly grand. Especially the chandeliers and the carpets and all. I have the chief hotel manager, Mr. Walter W. Wall, beside me now. He would like the honor of a word with you, sir. Put him on, said the president. Mr. President, this is Walter W. Wall. What a sumptuous hotel this is. The decorations are superb. Have you noticed that all the carpets are wall-to-wall, Mr. Walter W. Wall? Said the president. I have indeed, Mr. President. And the wallpaper is wall-to-wall too, Mr. Walter Wall. His name is a pun on wall-to-wall. I wonder if Dave Pilkey got inspiration from this book, because all the teachers in Captain Underpants have names that are puns on words. I don't know. Anyways. Yes, sir, Mr. President. Isn't that something? It's going to be a real pleasure running a beautiful place like this. Hey, what's going on over there? There's something coming out of the elevators. Help! Suddenly the loudspeaker in the president's study gave out a series of the most ghastly screams and yells. Hey! Help! Hey! Help! 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 What on earth's going on? Said the president. Shuckworth? Are you there, Shuckworth? Shanks? Showler? Mr. Walter Wall? Where are you all? What's happening? The screams continued. They were so loud the president had to put his fingers in his ears. Every house in the world that had a television or radio receiver heard those awful screams. There were other noises, too. Loud grunts and snortings and crunching sounds. Then there was silence. Frantically, the president called the Space Hotel on the radio. Houston called the Space Hotel. The president called Houston. Houston called the president. Then both of them called the Space Hotel again. But answer came there none. Up there in space, all was silent. "Something nasty's happened," said the president. "It's those men from Mars," said the ex-chief of the army. "I told you to let me blow them up." "Silence!" snapped the president. "I've got to think." The loudspeaker began to crackle. "Hello," it said. "Hello, hello, hello. Are you receiving me, Space Control in Houston?" The president grabbed the mic on his desk. "Leave it to me, Houston," he shouted. "President Gilligrass here, receiving you loud and clear. Go ahead." "Astronaut Shuckworth here, Mr. President. Back up board the commuter capsule. Thank heavens." "What happened, Shuckworth? Who's with you?" "We're most of us here, Mr. President, I'm glad to say. Shanks and Shaller are with me, and a whole bunch of other folks. I guess we lost maybe a couple of dozen people altogether. Pastry chefs, porters, the sort of thing. It sure was a scramble getting out of that place alive." "What do you mean you lost 24 people?" shouted the president. "How did you lose them?" "Gobbled up," replied Shuckworth. "One gulp and that was it. I saw a big 6-foot-tall assistant manager being swallowed up just like you'd swallow a lump of ice cream, Mr. President. No chewing. Nothing. Just down the hatch." "But who?" yelled the president. "Who are you talking about? Who did the swallowing?" "Hold it!" cried Shuckworth. "Oh, my lord, here they all come now. They're coming after us. They're swarming out of the space hotel. They're coming out in swarms. You have to excuse me a moment, Mr. President. No time to talk right now." To be continued.